10 years had passed since the day humanity left in silence. Elder Counselor Mepharon called an emergency session that would change galactic history forever. The ancient being had served on the council for over 2 centuries. He had seen wars, plagues, and disasters, but he had never seen anything like this. The council chamber was only half full. Many species could no longer afford to send representatives. Their economies had collapsed without human trade and technology. The great galactic civilization was dying slowly. Mepharon's voice echoed in the mostly empty chamber. We are here to discuss the current state of galactic civilization. The numbers cannot be ignored any longer. Economic analyst Jor then stepped forward with his report. His hands shook as he spoke. Galactic GDP has dropped by 34%. In 10 years, technological advancement has slowed to pre-human levels. Most critically, birth rates across multiple species are declining as medical knowledge degrades. The numbers were worse than anyone had admitted publicly. Whole sectors of the galaxy were returning to pre-industrial conditions. Space travel was becoming rare and expensive. Many colonies had been abandoned entirely. The trade networks are broken, Jor then continued. The medical systems are failing. The communication networks work poorly. We estimate that galactic civilization has regressed by approximately 200 years. Whispers filled the chamber. Some delegates had suspected things were bad, but not this bad. Archivist Kethis floated forward on her energy platform. Her translucent form flickered with emotion as she spoke. I have spent 5 years studying the human records they left behind. What I found will disturb you all. She activated a holographic display showing human historical documents. Humans faced rejection and persecution throughout their own history. Different human groups excluded each other based on appearance, beliefs, and origin. They learned to survive it, to grow stronger from it. The display showed images from human history: wars, discrimination, exile, and recovery. Always recovery. They never expected us to accept them completely, Kethis said quietly. They hoped we would, but they prepared for our rejection. They have survived exclusion before. They know how to do it again. The silence in the chamber was heavy. The aliens had thought they were teaching humans a lesson. Instead, humans had been prepared for exactly this situation. Kethis continued her presentation. But more importantly, humans always returned stronger after periods of isolation. They used rejection as motivation to improve themselves. They turned exclusion into independence. Former Ambassador Zephyra stood to speak. She was now an elder herself, and her words carried great weight. She had been the only major delegate to consistently defend humanity. We called them aggressive, but they only fought when attacked, she said. Her voice was sad but firm. We called them unpredictable, but they were the most reliable allies any species had ever known. We called them contamination, but they elevated every species they touched. She walked to the center of the chamber, looking around at the faces of delegates who had voted for Resolution 2847. We feared they would dominate us, so we drove them away. Now we learn that the galaxy only functions when they are part of it. Delegate after delegate stood to speak. They shared stories of human help and friendship that they had ignored during the vote. They talked about human innovations that had improved their lives. They admitted that fear had made them act stupidly. The Vextar representative, Speaker Nixtar, spoke with deep regret. My predecessor voted for the resolution because he feared human influence on our young. Now our young cannot travel to other worlds because human-designed safety systems are failing. We traded imaginary future risks for real present disasters. The aquatic Merdani delegate, Deep Singer Coralla, spoke through her water-filled communication sphere. We complained that humans took resources from our space. We did not mention that they also protected our cargo ships from pirates. Without human patrol vessels, we have lost more ships in 3 years than in the previous 30. Even the proud Shalveth admitted their mistakes. Crystalline Elder Velketh's voice rang like wind chimes as he spoke. We said human emotions made them unreliable, but human creativity solved problems that pure logic could not. Our greatest technological advances in the past century came from human-Shalveth collaboration. Counselor Velthari, the architect, of Resolution 2847 stood last. She looked much older than her years. The stress of watching her empire crumble had aged her rapidly. I believed I was protecting the galaxy, she said quietly. I thought humans were too dangerous, too unpredictable, too aggressive. I was wrong about everything. She paused, struggling with words she had never expected to say. I have learned that there is a difference between strength and aggression. Humans were strong, but they used that strength to protect others. I mistook their power for threat when it was actually our greatest security. The chamber was completely silent. Velthari's admission carried enormous weight. She had been humanity's greatest opponent. I propose we formally revoke Resolution 2847, she announced. I propose we send a delegation to Sol System to apologize and ask humans to return. The vote was unanimous. Every delegate supported the motion. Even the species that had been loudest in their criticism of humanity now begged for their return. Preparations began immediately for the largest diplomatic mission in galactic history. Elder Counselor Mepharan would lead the delegation. Personally, representatives from every major species would join him. They would carry formal apologies and offers of complete autonomy for human colonies. Admiral Kolvar commanded the diplomatic fleet of 50 ships. They carried gifts from across the galaxy, art, technology, and cultural treasures from hundreds of worlds. Everything the aliens could think of to show their regret and desire for reconciliation. The fleet approached Sol System slowly and carefully. They broadcast messages of peace and friendship. They transmitted the formal revocation of Resolution 2847. They begged for a chance to speak with human leaders. The response came from Admiral Song Kyung-ho, commander of the Sol Defense Fleet. His image appeared on the diplomatic vessel's main screen. He looked older than the last time aliens had seen him, but also somehow stronger. Elder Counselor Mepharan, Song said politely. The Terran Federation acknowledges your delegation and your message. We have reviewed your proposal for renewed relations. Mepharan felt hope for the first time in years. Admiral Song, we come with humble apologies and sincere desires for reconciliation. We were wrong to exclude humanity from galactic civilization. Song nodded slowly. We appreciate your words, Elder Counselor. We understand that the past 10 years have been difficult for many species. Then you will consider returning? Mepharan asked eagerly. Song's expression did not change. Elder Counselor, the Terran Federation has given careful consideration to your proposal. We spent 10 years evaluating our relationship with galactic civilization. We have reached our conclusion. Behind Song, through the communication screen, Mepharan could see other human officers. They all looked calm and confident. They looked like people who had found their purpose. Our conclusion is that we are incompatible with galactic civilization as currently structured, Song continued. We have different values, different priorities, and different approaches to problem solving. Attempts to force compatibility have failed. Mepharan felt his hope dying. But we have changed. We understand our mistakes. We need your help. Elder Counselor, Song said gently, you need our help because you drove away the species that was helping you. This pattern will repeat. Fear and suspicion will return. We will be excluded again when the next crisis makes you nervous. The truth, in Song's words, hurt because it was accurate. The aliens had turned on humanity once. They would probably do it again when times got hard. We have found something better in isolation, Song explained. We have built a society that works for us. We have solved problems that we could never solve while trying to satisfy 800 different species with conflicting demands. Through the communication screen, Mepharan could see glimpses of human space stations and ships. The technology was clearly more advanced than anything humans had possessed before. In 10 years of isolation, they had progressed centuries beyond their previous capabilities. What about the suffering in the galaxy? Zephyra asked. She had joined the diplomatic mission despite her junior status. Species are dying because medical knowledge is lost. Colonies are failing because trade networks have collapsed. Cannot human compassion overcome human anger? Song looked at her, with something that might have been sympathy. Young Zafara, we are not angry. Anger would suggest we still care about your approval. We have moved beyond that need. His words were like ice water. The aliens had expected anger, which could be soothed with apologies. They had prepared for resentment, which could be overcome with gifts. They had not prepared for indifference. The suffering you describe is real, Song continued. But it is not our responsibility to fix problems that we did not create. You chose to exclude us. You must learn to live with that choice. Elder Counselor Mepharon made one final attempt. Admiral, surely there is some arrangement we can make, some way to restore cooperation between our peoples. Song was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was final. 3 years had passed since humanity left. The galaxy had learned to survive without them, but it was not the same galaxy anymore. Everything worked poorly. Everything cost more. Everything took longer to fix. Counselor Velthari sat in her private office reading reports that made her stomach hurt. Her empire was falling apart slowly but surely. Trade income was down 40%. 3 colonies had requested emergency aid. 2 more were considering leaving the empire entirely. Her assistant brought her the daily briefing. Ma'am, the Outer Rim governors are demanding another emergency meeting. They say the shipping delays are getting worse. Velthari rubbed her temples with 2 of her 4 hands. Before humans left, cargo moved efficiently across the galaxy. Human shipping companies had used advanced route planning and just-in-time delivery. They had made the impossible look easy. Now alien companies were trying to fill the gap, but they lacked the human ability to adapt quickly to problems. When asteroid storms blocked shipping lanes, alien cargo sat in space for weeks while bureaucrats decided what to do. Humans would have found new routes within hours. Schedule the meeting, she told her assistant. What else can we do? On the crystal world of Shalveth Prime, the great crystal cities were growing darker each day. The beautiful light displays that tourists came to see were failing one by one. The problem was power. Human engineers had designed fusion reactors that were perfect for crystal-based technology. The reactors produced clean energy that made the crystals glow brighter. But the reactors needed constant maintenance that only humans understood. Chief Engineer Kristall had tried everything. His best technicians studied human technical manuals. They brought in experts from other species. They even tried to hire former human workers who had alien spouses. Nothing worked. The reactor systems were too complex. Every attempt to modify them made things worse. Without human knowledge, the great crystal cities would go dark within 5 years. The young Corvani delegate, Zafara, had grown older and sadder in the 3 years since humans left. She was no longer a junior member of the council. The crisis had promoted her quickly as older delegates retired in disgrace. She spent her days trying to solve problems that seemed impossible. Her people needed help with space technology, but the human engineers who had been teaching them were gone. Other species offered help, but their technology was not compatible with Corvani biology. Zafara often worked late into the night, reading old human reports and research papers. She was looking for clues about how to continue the work that humans had started. But human writing often referenced concepts and methods that other species did not understand. Dr. Han Wanshik had been translating ancient Corvani texts that contained important historical information. His notes were detailed, but he had used human cultural references to explain Corvani concepts. Without understanding human culture, the translations made no sense. On the manufacturing world of Rigel 7, millions of workers had lost their jobs when the human-operated mines closed. The mining equipment was still there, but no one knew how to use it safely. Foreman Morgeth had tried to keep the mines running. He had worked with humans for years and thought he understood the systems. But on his 3rd day as the new supervisor, a tunnel collapsed. 12 workers died. The human safety protocols were more complex than they appeared. Humans had an intuitive understanding of structural engineering that other species lacked. They could sense problems before instruments detected them. They could make quick decisions that prevented disasters. Without that human insight, the mines were too dangerous to operate. The planet's economy collapsed almost overnight. Dr. Graham continued her secret observations from her hidden research station. Her reports to Earth painted a picture of accelerating decline across the galaxy. The most serious problem was not economic or technological, it was social. Without humans to serve as neutral mediators, old conflicts between species were returning. Aquatic Murdani had always been suspicious of the desert-dwelling Draktar. When they both belonged to the same galactic community, humans had helped them work together. Human diplomats understood both cultures and could translate between them. Now, trade disputes between the two species were escalating into threats of war. Neither side trusted the other. Neither side was willing to compromise. There was no one they both trusted to mediate their disagreement. Similar problems were developing across the galaxy. The insectoid Vextar and the crystalline Shalveth had competing claims to the same star system. The tree-like Sylvan and the rock-like Granite Collective could not agree on environmental protection standards. Before, human diplomats would have found solutions that satisfied everyone. Now each dispute became a crisis that threatened galactic stability. Ariam wrote in her reports, "Humans were not just participants in galactic civilization. They were the species that made cooperation between other species possible. Without them, the galaxy is breaking apart into isolated groups that cannot communicate effectively." The medical crisis was getting worse every month. Dr. Thrivel faced problems he had never imagined. Human doctors had been the galaxy's medical innovators. They studied diseases that affected multiple species and found cures that worked across different biologies. The Zentorians had excellent medicine for their own species, but their treatments often poisoned other aliens. The Shalveth had powerful healing crystals, but they only worked on silicon-based life forms. The Vextar had advanced surgical techniques, but their methods were too aggressive for softer species. Humans had been the only species that could treat everyone. Their medical knowledge worked across all alien biologies. When they left, they took that universal medical understanding with them. A plague outbreak on the colony world of Kepler 438b was spreading out of control. The local Draktar population was dying fast. Traditional Draktar medicine was not working. Other species had offered help, but their treatments made the disease worse. Thrivel knew that human doctors could have stopped the plague quickly. They had dealt with similar outbreaks before, but the humans were gone, and thousands of Draktar were dying. Factory accidents were becoming common across industrial worlds. Human safety engineers had designed protection systems for mixed species, work environments. They understood how different aliens reacted to danger and designed safety protocols accordingly. Without human oversight, workplace accidents increased by 300% in the first year after the Exodus. Species that had worked together safely for decades were suddenly injuring each other through misunderstandings and incompatible safety procedures. The cultural impact was just as devastating. Human art and music had become popular across the galaxy. Human stories and movies were translated into hundreds of alien languages. Human festivals and holidays had been adopted by other species. When humans left, they took their culture with them. Alien entertainment became bland and repetitive. Art lost its emotional impact. Music became technical but not moving. Young aliens who had grown up with human culture felt lost. They had learned to express themselves through human art forms. They had found meaning in human stories and songs. Without that influence, they struggled to find their own cultural identity. Zephyra often listened to recordings of human music in her private quarters. The songs reminded her of better times when the galaxy felt hopeful and united. Now everything felt divided and afraid. She tried to understand why humans had been so important to galactic civilization. Other species were older, stronger, or smarter in specific areas. But humans had been the only species that could work with everyone. The answer came to her slowly. Humans were not the best at any one thing, but they were good enough at everything. They could understand alien psychology, learn alien languages, adapt to alien environments, and solve alien problems. They were universal translators for a galaxy, full of species that could not translate for themselves. Scout missions to human space brought back disturbing reports. The automated defense platforms were becoming more sophisticated. Human ships were spotted conducting exercises with weapons and tactics that other species had never seen. Captain Yilntar led another scouting mission to Sol system. This time, she tried a different approach. Instead of requesting diplomatic contact, she simply asked for humanitarian aid for the plague victims on Kepler 438b. The response came from the same automated platforms, but the message was different. Captain Yilntar, the Terran Federation is aware of the medical crisis on Kepler 438b. However, we no longer provide medical assistance to galactic communities. We recommend you contact the Galactic Health Consortium for aid. Have a pleasant day. The politeness was worse than anger would have been. Humans were not mad at the galaxy. They simply did not care anymore. Yilntar realized that the automated systems knew who she was and why she had come. Human intelligence networks were still watching galactic events. They knew about every crisis and every failure. They simply chose not to help. The humans had moved beyond needing the galaxy's approval. They had found something better in isolation. Dr. Ariam's latest report contained the most troubling information yet. Human technology was advancing rapidly in isolation. Their ships were faster. Their weapons were more powerful. Their defensive systems were impenetrable. Trade Coordinator Velsani stared at her screens in growing panic. 3 months had passed since the humans left. The numbers on her displays told a story she did not want to believe. Cargo shipments were down 60% across the Zentaurian Empire. Food deliveries were delayed by weeks. Industrial production had dropped to levels not seen in 50 years. The carefully balanced trade network that fed billions of people was collapsing. She pressed buttons on her control panel, trying to contact human cargo vessels. The same message appeared each time. Signal not acknowledged. The humans were still out there. Their ships showed up on long-range sensors, but they would not respond to any communication. Coordinator, called her assistant, Gentari. The Vegan colony is requesting emergency food supplies. Their harvest failed, and the human agricultural ships are not responding to distress calls. Velsani closed her 4 eyes and tried to think. For decades, human ships had carried food between worlds. Human farmers had developed techniques that worked on dozens of different planets. Human engineers had built the cargo systems that made fast delivery possible. Send a message to the Merdani food suppliers, she ordered. Ask if they can cover the Vegan emergency. Gentari looked worried. Ma'am, the Merdani use human-designed storage systems. Without human technicians, their cargo will spoil during long trips. Velsani realized the problem was bigger than she had thought. Humans had not just participated in galactic trade. They had designed the systems that made it work. Across the galaxy, similar problems were appearing everywhere. Medical Director Thrivel faced his own crisis at the Galactic Health Consortium. His main computer showed red warning signals from dozens of worlds. Disease outbreaks were spreading faster than his teams could track them. The problem was not just that human doctors were gone. The monitoring systems that watched for epidemics had been designed by humans. The medical databases that stored treatment information had been maintained by human programmers. The research networks that shared medical discoveries had been operated from human stations. Director reported his chief analyst Morketh. We have confirmed cases of Rigelian fever on 7 worlds, but our tracking system cannot locate the source. The human medical ships that used to monitor space travel are no longer sharing data. Thrivel looked at the spreading infection pattern on his display. Rigelian fever was deadly to most species, but humans were naturally immune. Human doctors had always been the ones to handle outbreaks. They could work safely around infected patients while other species had to stay away. What about our stored treatments? He asked. The manufacturing process was developed by Dr. Sarah Chen at the Human Medical Research Station. We have the formula, but we do not understand all the steps. Our attempts to recreate the medicine have failed. Thrival realized that losing the humans meant losing more than personnel. It meant losing knowledge that had never been fully transferred to other species. On the industrial world of Theta Prime, factory supervisor Gorthek watched his production lines shut down one by one. The automated systems had been working perfectly for years. Suddenly, they were failing everywhere. His chief engineer, Zilpak, brought him the diagnostic reports. "Sir, all the human-designed AI systems stopped working at exactly the same time. It happened 3 days ago at 1447 Galactic Standard Time." "Stopped working how?" Gorthek asked. "They just shut off. No warning, no error messages. They completed their current tasks and then went into standby mode. They will not restart." Gorthek studied the reports. The human-built systems had been the most advanced in the galaxy. They learned from experience and improved over time. They had made his factories more efficient than his competitors. "Can we replace them with our own systems?" Zilpak looked doubtful. The human AI was integrated into everything. "Our systems cannot interface with the human-designed hardware. We would have to rebuild the entire factory." Similar failures were happening across thousands of worlds. Human-designed computers, robots, and automated systems were shutting down everywhere. It was as if they had been programmed to stop working. When humans left, young Zephyra worked late in her office trying to understand what was happening. As a junior delegate, she had access to galactic databases. The information she found scared her. Humans had been involved in almost every aspect of galactic civilization. They had designed the hyperspace communication network. They had built the early warning systems that watched for asteroid impacts. They had created the translation programs that let different species understand each other. Most importantly, they had been the bridges between species that could not work together directly. The aquatic Merdani could not visit desert worlds where the reptilian Draktar lived, but humans could work with both species. They carried messages and goods between groups that had no other contact. Zephyra tried to call her human friends, even though she knew it was hopeless. Dr. Han Wonshik had been teaching her about ancient history. Engineer Park Minji had been helping her people upgrade their space travel technology. Ambassador Lee So-young had been her mentor in galactic politics. All of them were gone. All their projects were half finished. All their knowledge was locked away in human space. She wrote reports to the council, trying to explain how serious the problem was. But the senior delegates did not want to listen. They were embarrassed about the situation and hoped it would fix itself. Xenopsychologist Merdala made a discovery that shocked everyone. She had been studying human behavior patterns in the months before they left. What she found was disturbing. "The evacuation was not a reaction to our vote," she reported to an emergency council session. The humans had been preparing to leave for over a year. The chamber was silent as she continued. They increased their food production and moved supplies to storage facilities. They transferred research data to secure servers. They trained additional personnel in critical positions. They even modified their automated systems with new programming. Counselor Velthari felt cold. "What does this mean?" "It means they knew we would reject them," Merdala said quietly. "They predicted our vote and prepared for it. They were not surprised by Resolution 2847. They were ready for it." The implications were terrible. The humans had not acted in anger or hurt feelings. They had made a calculated decision based on their understanding of galactic politics. They had known exactly how other species would react to their presence. Velthari tried to speak but found no words. The humans had been steps ahead of the council the entire time. On the remote research station Kepler 9, one human had stayed behind. Dr. G. Ariam had been studying galactic sociology for 20 years. When the evacuation order came, she had requested permission to remain and observe. Her request had been approved by Earth Command. She lived alone on the station, hidden from alien sensors. Her job was to watch what happened after humans left and report back to Earth. What she saw made her sad and angry. The Corvani, who had voted against the resolution, were suffering the most. Their young civilization had depended on human technology and guidance. Without human help, their space program was failing. Their colonies were struggling. Their people were afraid. Young species across the galaxy were facing similar problems. They had looked to humans as teachers and protectors. The older, more powerful species had seen this as a threat. Now the younger species were alone and vulnerable. Arium watched alien news broadcasts and read diplomatic reports. The tone was changing from satisfaction to worry to fear. Trade was collapsing. Medical systems were failing. Communication networks were breaking down. Most disturbing was the growing tension between species that had once cooperated. Without humans to mediate disputes, old conflicts were returning. The Zentorians and Shalveth were arguing over trade, routes. The Murdani and Vextar had stopped sharing technology. Humans had been the glue holding galactic civilization together. Without them, everything was falling apart. Scout Captain Ylantar led a desperate mission to the edge of human space. Her ship carried diplomatic messages from a dozen species. They all wanted to talk to humans. They wanted to apologize, to negotiate, to find some way to fix the situation. Her ship approached the outer edge of the Sol system carefully. She did not want to appear threatening. Her weapons were powered down. Her shields were lowered. She broadcast peaceful intentions on all frequencies. The response came from automated defense platforms that had not been there before. The voice was polite but firm. Unknown vessel, you are entering restricted space. Sol system is closed to non-human traffic. Please maintain your distance and state your business. This is Scout Captain Ylantar of the Corvani Republic, she replied. I carry urgent diplomatic messages for the human government. Thank you for your message, Captain. However, the Terran Federation does not currently maintain diplomatic relations with galactic species. Please depart Sol system immediately. Ylantar was shocked by several things. First, humans were calling themselves the Terran Federation now, not the Human Republic as before. Second, their defense platforms were clearly more advanced than anything humans had possessed when they left. Captain, reported her sensor. Officer. I am detecting weapons systems on those platforms that are beyond our current technology. Captain Lee Eugen was studying navigation charts when the universe changed forever. Her exploration ship, the New Horizon, had been mapping the Kepler 4042 system for 3 months. They had discovered 2 planets that might support life. The crew was excited about their findings. The communication alert sounded at exactly 09:15 ship time. Communications Officer Kim Jae-won looked up from his console with confusion. Captain, we have an emergency transmission from Fleet Command. Maximum encryption. Eyes only. Eugen took the message pad with steady hands. She had been a ship captain for 12 years. She had seen emergency orders before. But as she read this message, her face went pale. Directive Omega. All human vessels and colonies. Immediate withdrawal to Sol system. No explanations. No farewells. Complete communications blackout with all non-human entities. This is not a drill. Implementation begins immediately. She read the message 3 times to make sure she understood. Directive Omega was something they had studied in the academy but never expected to use. It was the plan for complete human withdrawal from galactic civilization. Jae-won, she called across the bridge. Signal all department heads. Emergency meeting in conference room A. 10 minutes. Her crew gathered quickly. They were good people who had served together for years. Chief Engineer Park Seon-ho looked worried. Science Officer Dr. Kim Yuna appeared confused. Security Chief Lieutenant Choi Woo-young stood at attention, ready for orders. We have received evacuation orders, Eugen announced. We are returning to Earth immediately. All current missions are terminated. Captain, Dr. Kim Yuna spoke carefully. What about our research data? We are in the middle of important discoveries. Pack everything, we take it all with us. What about the Zentorian research vessel we were working with? Asked Engineer Park Seon-ho. They are expecting our joint report next week. No contact with alien vessels, no explanations, no goodbyes. The crew exchanged worried glances. They had all made friends among alien species. Many had been looking forward to sharing their discoveries with alien scientists. I know this is hard, Yujin said quietly. But orders are orders. We have 6 hours to prepare for departure. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were happening on thousands of human ships. Captains read the same message. Crews prepared for immediate departure. No one questioned the orders, even though everyone wanted to understand them. Admiral Park Taman sat in Luna Command, the primary fleet coordination center orbiting Earth's moon. His command room had 50 officers working at displays that showed the position of every human vessel in known space. Today, those displays would track the largest military operation in human history. The Admiral was a veteran of 4 conflicts. He had designed many of the strategies that kept galactic peace. But this operation was different from anything he had ever planned. This was not an attack or a defense. This was a complete withdrawal from a civilization that humans had helped to build. Status report, he ordered. Commander Oh Sungmin stepped forward with his tablet. Sir, Operation Silent Return is proceeding on schedule. 43,000 human vessels have acknowledged evacuation orders. Civilian transports are moving to designated pickup points. Military escort vessels are taking protective positions. Park studied the tactical display. Human ships were converging from across the galaxy like birds flying home before a storm. But this storm was not natural. This storm had been created by fear and politics. Any problems with the alien reactions? Park asked. Several alien vessels have attempted to follow. Our ships, sir. They appear to want answers. Our captains are maintaining communication blackout as ordered. Good. What about the colonies? Planetary evacuations are more complex but proceeding. Governor Kim Soo-jin reports that New Kepler will be completely evacuated within 2 weeks. New Kepler was humanity's most successful colony. Over 2 million humans lived there. They had built a beautiful city and turned a wilderness planet into a garden world. Leaving it would break many hearts. Governor Kim Soo-jin stood on the balcony of her office watching the evacuation of New Seoul. The capital city stretched out below her, a mix of human architecture and alien designs. Centaurian families had lived here for 15 years alongside humans. Their children had grown up together. Now human families were packing their lives into cargo containers. The massive transport ships landed every few hours to take another group home. The aliens watched in growing confusion and distress. Governor, her assistant Park Hyo-jin approached carefully. The Centaurian community leaders are requesting a meeting. They want to know what is happening. Soo-jin closed her eyes. She had known these Centaurians personally. She had attended their celebrations and mourned their losses. But her orders were clear. No meetings. No explanations. Ma'am, they are offering to help with the evacuation. They want to know if they did something wrong. The answer is no to help and no to meetings, Soo-jin said firmly. We leave quietly and completely. She watched as young Centaurian children stood in doorways, waving goodbye to their human friends. The human children waved back from the transport vehicles, but they could not stop to play one last time. The cultural archives were being loaded onto special transport ships. Human art, music and literature that had been shared with aliens for decades was going home. Libraries full of human books in alien languages were being packed away. Museums displaying human achievements were being emptied. We are erasing ourselves from this world, Hyojin said sadly. No, Soo-jin corrected. We are taking ourselves home. At the Proxima Centauri research station, engineer Choi Min-hyuk was performing the hardest task of his career. He was shutting down systems that he had spent 8 years building. The station was a miracle of cooperation between humans and the insectoid Vextar species. His work partner, Clicktar, watched him with growing distress. The Vextar's compound eyes reflected confusion and hurt. His mandibles clicked in the rhythm that meant deep sadness. Friend Min-hyuk, Clicktar said in his careful English. Clicktar not understand. Why you destroy our work? Project almost finished. Great discovery very close. Min-hyuk stopped typing and looked at his friend. They had worked together every day for 8 years. They had solved impossible engineering problems together. They had saved each other's lives during the solar storm emergency 2 years ago. I am not destroying it, Minyuk said quietly. I am preserving it. But data going to human servers. Kliktar cannot access human servers. Work dies without both species. Kang Doyun walked through the long hallways of the Galactic Council building. His black shoes made soft sounds on the smooth metal floor. He had walked these same halls for 30 years. Today felt different. Today felt like an ending. The human ambassador carried a simple leather bag. Inside were his notes and documents, but he knew he would not need them today. The vote was already decided. Everyone knew what would happen. Other aliens moved past him in the hallway. Some nodded politely. Others looked away. A few stared at him with cold eyes. Do-hyun kept walking. He had learned long ago that dignity was more important than popularity. The main council chamber was huge. It could hold representatives from over 800 different worlds. The ceiling was made of clear crystal that showed the stars beyond. Do-hyun had always liked looking at those stars. They reminded him of home. He found his seat at the human table. Only 3 chairs were there now. Once, there had been 12. But over the years, the council had reduced human representation. They said humans had too much influence for such a young species. Dr. Yoon Nari was already sitting down. She was reading something on her tablet. Her face looked tired. As Earth's top expert on alien life, she had spent decades trying to build friendship between humans and other species. The stress showed in her eyes. "Good morning, Nari," Do-hyun said as he sat down. She looked up and gave him a small smile. "Good morning. Are you ready for this?" "As ready as one can be for their own trial," he replied. Around them, the chamber filled with aliens of all shapes and sizes. The tall, blue-skinned Zentorians took their places near the front. Their leader, Counselor Valtteri, wore golden robes that showed her high rank. She had been pushing for today's vote for 3 years. The crystal-like Shalveth delegates floated in their special chairs. Light passed through their bodies in beautiful patterns, but Do-hyun knew their beauty hid cold hearts. They had been among the first to call humans dangerous. Near the back sat the insect-like Vextar representatives. Their leader, Speaker Crixton, clicked his mandibles nervously. The Vextar had once been humanity's closest allies, but even they had turned away when pressure from larger species grew too strong. Young Zafara of the Corvani sat in the junior delegate section. She was only in her 2nd year on the council. Her people were still new to galactic politics. She kept looking at the human table with worry in her large, dark eyes. The session began with formal speeches. Counselor Valtteri stood at the central podium. Her voice carried clearly through the chamber's sound system. "Today we vote on Resolution 2847, she announced. This measure will place necessary controls on human expansion and military activities. It is time to protect the galaxy from the risks that this species presents." Do-hyun listened as speaker after speaker rose to support the resolution. They talked about human aggression. They mentioned human unpredictability. They spoke of the need for stability and order. The Murdani representative talked about human mining operations in their space. They take resources without asking. They build stations where they please. They do not respect our ancient ways. Do-hyun wanted to remind them that humans had saved 3 Murdani colonies from asteroid impacts. Human early warning systems had prevented millions of deaths. But he stayed quiet. The Shalveth speaker complained about human emotions. They make decisions based on feelings, not logic. This makes them unreliable partners. We cannot trust species that act on impulse. Again, Do-hyun said nothing. He remembered the human rescue teams that had worked for weeks to save Shalveth miners trapped in a collapsed crystal cave. Those same humans had cried when they could not save everyone. Hours passed. Speaker after speaker rose to condemn humanity. They talked about contamination. They worried about corruption of galactic culture. They feared human influence on younger species. Finally, it was time for the human response. Do-hyun stood slowly. The chamber grew quiet. Every eye and sensor focused on him. "Honored delegates," he began. His voice was calm and clear. 30 years ago, humanity received an invitation to join this council. We accepted with joy and hope. We came believing that intelligence and goodwill could overcome any difference. He paused and looked around the chamber. We shared our music. We shared our stories. We shared our technology freely. We asked only for the same respect we showed others. Some delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. We helped build the trade routes that connect your worlds. Human engineers designed the medical systems that saved millions of alien lives. Human artists created works that brought joy to species across the galaxy. Velthari frowned. This was not the angry response she had expected. We defended worlds that could not defend themselves. We explored dangerous regions so others would not have to. We died alongside your people in the Outer Rim conflicts. Young Zephyra was listening carefully. Her people remembered. The Corvani had nearly gone extinct before human intervention saved them. But we understand, Dohyun continued. You have made your position clear. You see us as a threat. You believe the galaxy would be safer without human involvement. He picked up his bag and nodded to Dr. Nari. She gathered her things as well. We respect your decision, Dohyun said. We will not fight it. We will not appeal it. We accept your judgment. The chamber was completely silent now. Many delegates had expected anger. They had prepared for human threats or demands. This quiet acceptance was unsettling. Velthari called for the vote. The results appeared on screens throughout the chamber. 847 votes in favor. Only 3 against. Zephyra had voted against the resolution. So had representatives from 2 small, weak species that remembered human help in their darkest hours. Dohyun stood for the last time as a galactic ambassador. We thank you for 30 years of cooperation. We will remember our time here. We hope you will remember it too. He and Dr. Nari walked toward the exit. Their footsteps echoed in the silent chamber. As they reached the doors, Dohyun turned back once. We wish you well in your future endeavors, he said quietly. Then they were gone. The chamber remained silent for a long time after the humans left. Many delegates stared at the empty human table. Something felt wrong, but they could not name what it was. Counselor Velthari tried to feel satisfied. She had won. The dangerous humans were now under control. The galaxy would be safer. But as she looked at the empty chairs where humans had sat for 3 decades, she felt only a strange, cold emptiness. The vote was over. Resolution 2847 had passed. The day humanity left in silence had begun.